Imagine you were born in 1800. No big deal, right? You've survived. You've got a house, a job, a life. Things are fine. And then one morning, you wake up and your tooth hurts. Not a little bit. Not a dull ache you can ignore. We're talking the kind of pain that sits behind your eye and makes you want to remove your own head. The kind where you can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't think about anything else. Just pain. Constant, merciless, absolutely unignorable pain. So you go to the doctor, and the doctor looks in your mouth, nods seriously, and I need you to really sit with this. He lights something on fire and puts it near your face, because the going medical theory is that there is a tiny worm living inside your tooth, eating it from the inside out, and the heat will draw it out. The worm does not come out, because there is no worm, because that was never true. But the doctor doesn't know that. Nobody knows that. And you're sitting there in 1800 with fire near your mouth and absolutely zero better options. That is what we're talking about today. Okay, stop. Before you click away, I need you to understand something. This is not a gross video. This is not a dentist ad. This is actually one of the most fascinating, bizarre, and deeply human rabbit holes in all of recorded history. And the fact that nobody's talking about it is exactly why we need to. Because here's the thing. A toothache is one of the most universally brutal experiences a human being can have. It doesn't care if you're a king or a peasant. It doesn't care what century you live in. It just absolutely ruins your life until it's dealt with. And yet, historians will spend entire careers writing about how Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon or how Rameses II built a temple. But nobody stops to ask what happened when Rameses II had a rotting molar at 2 in the morning with zero painkillers and zero dentists. That is a problem, and today we're fixing it. We're going all the way back. Ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, and the absolute nightmare that was medieval Europe. We're going to find out what they used, what they believed, and honestly, some of the most spectacularly wrong medical theories ever written down by people who were supposed to be the smartest in the room. We're talking about beliefs so unhinged they will make you want to close this tab and go hug your dentist. This is the video nobody made. Let's go. All right. Before we talk about ancient dental disasters, we have to start with something that will genuinely surprise you. Because the first plot twist in this entire story is this. For the vast majority of human prehistory, and we didn't really have a dental problem. Let that sink in for a second. Archaeological studies of prehistoric hunter-gatherer skulls show remarkably healthy teeth. Minimal cavities, minimal decay, strong enamel, and these people had zero toothbrushes, zero toothpaste, and absolutely zero dental appointments. So how? How did a person living in 30,000 BCE, eating raw meat, sleeping on rocks, running from predators, somehow have better teeth than the average person sitting in a modern office? The answer is diet. Specifically, the complete absence of one ingredient that has quietly destroyed human dental health more than almost anything else in history: refined sugar. And its close cousin, processed carbohydrates. Hunter-gatherers ate meat, fish, nuts, tubers, berries, and leafy plants. Their diet was almost entirely non-sticky, non-fermentable, and low in the simple sugars that oral bacteria absolutely feast on. Because the bacteria in your mouth, Streptococcus mutans if you want to get technical, are basically tiny little sugar factories. They eat refined carbohydrates and convert them into lactic acid, which then eats through your enamel like a slow biological acid bath. No refined carbs? The bacteria have nothing to work with. Your teeth survive. So ironically, the people we think of as the most primitive humans were, from a dental perspective, doing significantly better than we were for a long time afterward. And the exact moment that all changed? Agriculture. Around 10,000 BCE, something happened that fundamentally changed human civilization. We figured out farming, and farming was in most ways a massive upgrade for our species. Stable food supply, permanent settlements, the beginning of everything that eventually became cities, writing, science, and the video you're watching right now. But for human teeth, farming was a disaster because farming meant grains, and grains meant bread, and bread meant sticky, starchy, fermentable carbohydrates sitting on your teeth every single day. Archaeologists can literally track the transition from hunter-gatherer to agricultural societies just by looking at teeth. The cavities, the abscesses, the bone loss, they all spike sharply the moment a population switches to grain-based farming. There's also a second factor nobody talks about: grit. Ancient ground flour, whether Egyptian, Mesopotamian, or Roman, was produced by grinding grain between millstones. And millstones shed tiny particles. Sand, stone dust, mineral grit, all of it ended up in the bread. So while the sugar content was destroying teeth from the inside, the mechanical abrasion of eating gritty bread was physically grinding down enamel from the outside. Archaeologists have found Egyptian mummies with teeth ground almost completely flat, not from cavities, but from a lifetime of eating stone-ground bread. So now we have a civilization. We have farming, we have bread, and we have millions of people developing toothaches, abscesses, and infections for the first time at scale. And now the real question kicks in. What did they actually do about it? Let's start in ancient Egypt, because Egypt gives us something extraordinary: actual written dental records. The Ebers Papyrus, dating to around 1550 BCE, is one of the oldest surviving medical texts in human history, and it contains an entire section dedicated to teeth. Now, before you get too impressed, let me tell you what their cutting-edge dental knowledge actually looked like. For a toothache, the Ebers Papyrus recommends a paste made from cumin, incense, and onion, applied directly to the tooth. There's also a recipe involving a dead mouse, a literal dead mouse, applied to the gum to treat pain. Now, was this purely superstition? Not entirely. Onions actually do contain compounds with mild antimicrobial properties. Cumin has been shown in modern research to have some anti-inflammatory effects. They were fumbling towards something real, just in completely the wrong direction. But here's where Egypt actually does impress us. Egyptian physicians, on it called SW&W, were among the first recorded professionals to specialize in dental care. The title for dentist in ancient Egypt literally translates to one who deals with teeth. There are inscriptions at the tomb of Hesi-Ra, dating to around 2650 BCE, that identify him as the earliest named dental practitioner in recorded history. This man had a job title: in 2650 BCE. That is remarkable. Egypt also developed early versions of dental fillings, not the modern composite resin your dentist uses, but mixtures of resin, malachite, and other minerals packed into cavities to reduce pain and exposure. Imperfect? Absolutely. But the conceptual leap, that you could fill a hole in a tooth and make it hurt less, was genuinely advanced thinking for the time. After 4,000 years of toothworms and dead mice, you might be hoping that Greece, the birthplace of philosophy, logic, and rational thought, finally brought some intellectual dignity to this story. It did not. Hippocrates gets a pass. The father of modern medicine had decent instincts about teeth, connected diet to dental health, and was broadly pointing in the right direction. One sentence, he earned it, moving on. Because we need to talk about Aristotle. Now, Aristotle is one of the greatest minds in human history. Logic, ethics, biology, physics. The man built the intellectual foundation of Western civilization, essentially from scratch. So when I tell you what he wrote about teeth, I need you to understand that this was not a stupid person. This makes it so much worse. Aristotle confidently declared in writing that men have more teeth than women. That's it. That's the claim. Men have more teeth than women. Written down, published, cited by other scholars for centuries afterward. Here is the thing that will keep you up at night. Aristotle was married. Twice. He had access to, at minimum, 2 women whose teeth he could have counted at any point during his life. He had students. He had colleagues. He spent decades studying animal anatomy in extraordinary detail, dissecting creatures, cataloging species, describing biological systems with remarkable accuracy. And at no point did anyone in his immediate circle apparently say, Aristotle, my friend, have you considered just opening a mouth and counting? He also believed teeth grew continuously throughout a person's life and could be replaced by new ones, like a shark. Also not true for humans. Also never verified. Also repeated as fact for generations. This is the thing about ancient intellectual authority. Once someone sufficiently brilliant wrote something down, the pressure to just agree with it was enormous. Questioning Aristotle felt like questioning gravity, so his tooth count went unchallenged for roughly 200 years. Now, Rome. Rome took a more practical approach to dental hygiene, and in some ways it genuinely worked. Wealthy Romans used metal or ivory toothpicks after meals. They had a tooth powder called dentifrice, made from ground bone, eggshell, oyster shell, and pumice. That was abrasive enough to scrub surface staining effectively. Unpleasant? Yes. Functional? Also yes. But the real star of Roman dental hygiene, and I need you to stay with me here, was urine. Specifically, urine used as mouthwash. Now, before your brain fully rejects this, there is actual chemistry behind it. Urine contains ammonia. Ammonia is a base. It neutralizes the acids in your mouth that eat through enamel. It also has mild bleaching properties, which is why Roman poets noted that a bright white smile was associated with people who used it regularly. The logic, chemically, is not insane. What is insane is the premium product tier that developed around this. Portuguese urine was considered the best. Not Roman urine. Portuguese. Imported. From Portugal to Rome. For your mouth. Roman merchants were literally shipping urine across the Mediterranean as a luxury dental product, and wealthy Romans were paying for the imported version because the local supply was considered inferior quality. The poet Catullus wrote about a man whose gleaming white teeth were proof he used urine constantly, and it was not written as an insult. It was presented as a sign of good grooming. For extractions, Roman physicians had developed proper metal forceps and had some working knowledge of pain management. Mandrake root, opium derivatives, to dull the experience beforehand. Not reliable by any modern measure. But the idea that you should try to make the patient comfortable before pulling a tooth was at least on the table. The gap between rich and poor Romans here was enormous. A wealthy Roman could access a trained physician, proper instruments, premium dentifrice, and pain management compounds. A poor Roman had a twig, some ash, and whatever they could produce themselves for free, which, given everything we just discussed, might have actually been the more hygienic option. And then we hit the Middle Ages, and the person treating your teeth is also the person who just cut your hair. Barber surgeons were the primary dental practitioners across most of Europe, from roughly 500 CE to the 1600s. Same chair, same shop. Haircut, bloodletting, tooth extraction. It was all on the menu. The experience went like this. You sat in public, often at a market or fair, while the barber surgeon grabbed your tooth with metal forceps and pulled. With no anesthetic beyond maybe some strong wine. In front of a crowd that was partly there for the entertainment. Records show tooth pullers would sometimes hire musicians to play loudly during extractions, both to drown out the screaming and to draw more customers. It was a spectator event. The church added its own layer of difficulty. Some religious communities taught that toothache was divine punishment for sin, which meant the correct response was prayer and fasting, neither of which helps an abscess. Where medieval Europe quietly impressed, though, was in herbal pain management. Botanical texts from the period document willow bark, containing salicin, the direct chemical precursor to aspirin, for pain and inflammation. Clove oil, still used today as a temporary analgesic. Myrrh, camphor, these weren't cures. But the chemistry behind some of them is real. They were finding valid things entirely by accident, which is its own strange kind of progress. Here is the fact that tends to stop people cold. Modern dentistry, actual, trained, professional, anesthetic-equipped dentistry, did not exist as a formal medical discipline until the 18th century. Pierre Fauchard, a French surgeon, published The Surgeon Dentist in 1728, essentially inventing the profession as we know it. The first dental school in the world didn't open until 1840. In Baltimore, let that land for a second. We just watched humanity go from dead mice and toothworm incantations through imported urine and market square extractions, all the way to 1840 before anyone thought to open a proper school for this. And somewhere in all of that chaos, in all of that pain and guesswork and spectacularly wrong theories, people still got up every morning and built civilizations. The pyramids, the Parthenon, the Roman aqueducts, the medieval cathedrals, all of it built by people dealing with dental pain that today would send any of us directly to an emergency appointment. We have entire museums dedicated to ancient swords and the battles they were used in, but the quiet, grinding, unglamorous reality of what it felt like to be a human body trying to function through an abscessed tooth in 500 BCE barely shows up in mainstream history. It's treated like a footnote. It isn't a footnote. It's the whole story. Because every single one of those emperors and philosophers and farmers and soldiers had a body that hurt and needed care, just like yours. They just had a 4,000-year head start on getting it spectacularly wrong first. Next time your dentist tells you something is going to pinch a little, just remember, you could have been in a medieval market square with a musician drowning out the sound. It's literally ancient history.